didn't have access to some startups, venture capital, that kind of thing,
That's
because
exactly right. So the 33 Act, as it's often called, the Securities Act of 1933 and the Securities Act of 1934 were designed to protect primarily ordinary investors. And so it created this statutory definition of someone that would be an accredited investor, a rich person who would be allowed to participate in these private transactions, and the rest of us were pretty much not allowed to participate. There were rare exceptions, but they were rarely used, cumbersome exceptions that took a lot of legal work, and it was a big pain. So they're rarely used by companies to raise capital and rarely used by ordinary people to invest. So it's been a huge shift. The law changed in 2012. It wasn't implemented until 2016. So this marketplace has only existed legally for 8 years. Very new still. And so people are still trying to figure out how this works and how they make money. It really isn't that hard. That's one of my key messages, is it's not a particularly difficult place, but it takes a little bit of education, a little bit of training, and that's easy. There's a lot of good training and information. I share a lot that's free, and so it's not hard to become an adept investor and allocate some of your capital that you've been saving for retirement into this. You did a great episode recently about self-directed IRAs. And this is really an important conversation because you can't use your Schwab or Robinhood brokerage accounts to invest in these private transactions. It's not allowed. The regulations don't allow for that kind of an account to hold that kind of asset. So you need to put it in a self-directed IRA. And your discussion with, I'm forgetting your guest's name, you'll have to forgive me, but you had a great guest on recently that talked about self-directed IRAs. It was very educational. I felt like I learned a lot, and I've done a lot of research on self-directed IRAs, and I've had 2 over the years.
well,
I will say,
been the surface.
yeah, I will say self-directed IRAs are a great tool for investment crowdfunding if you have at least $100,000 in your IRA and you are eligible to be investing tens of thousands of dollars a year in investment crowdfunding. And there are limits based on your income. Everyone is allowed to invest a little bit, but you have to be pretty wealthy to be, I say wealthy, you have to have a good income to invest tens of thousands of dollars.
You're absolutely right about the self-directed IRA, but for those who may not be up on some of the lingo, I don't want to turn this into a finance class, but and I definitely want to get into some of the projects you're working on now. You mentioned accredited investor and self-directed IRAs. For those may not know those terms, can you give me a quick rundown on what accredited is and how
Sure.
crowdfunding gets around that rule?
Yeah. So accredited investors are allowed to invest in pretty much anything. Now, the marketplace doesn't always make our less wealthy friends. They can't invest in everything because some deals have $1 million minimum. And if your net worth is $2 million, you may be an accredited investor, but you may not be able to do $1 million in every deal. So you're still not able to access everything. Some deals have $50 million. They're truly institutional kinds of deals.
Mm-hmm.
But crowdfunding, regulation crowdfunding, is a totally legitimate SEC regulated, FINRA governed marketplace for the issuance of securities by small businesses. So literally, it's not hard to find food trucks that are raising $30,000 in debt, and you can go invest in their debt. And usually in the marketplace today, a food truck raising capital will pay 12 or 14% interest. That sounds high in a way, but we have to remember that there's some risk that the food truck business won't go well, and so they have to pay people to carry that risk. But at the same time, remember, their primary alternative for a $30,000 loan is probably something that looks a lot like credit card debt, or maybe even more expensive than credit card debt. So the marketplace providing 12, 14% interest loans is really a win-win for investors and for the food truck operators. But you can also invest in startups that are building the fanciest technology. Like there's an offering right now that's raising capital from the crowd to build electric cars, and they claim to have a completely novel construction, building process, and that they will begin delivering cars to consumers this year. And you think about the process involved in bringing EVs to market. Other cars, like I'm invested in one that raised capital from the crowd called Aptera. They raised their first capital from the crowd, I think, 5 years ago. On this go, it was a company that went out of business a decade ago and then relaunched. On this attempt, they started raising from the crowd 5 years ago. They still have not sold a car. I'm a big fan. I'm waiting for my Aptera to be delivered. But so anyway, we have the full range, right? From high tech, exciting companies, and you can invest in their equity, down to the simplest, bare bones, small businesses, from food trucks on up, the whole gamut. And it's so exciting. And if you're like me and you want to not just make money with your money, but you want to do some good with your money, there's opportunities to invest in people with disabilities. I invested in one of those deals just 2 weeks ago. A woman who is legally blind, runs a vegan bake shop where she employs only people who have disabilities. And so I was able to invest in that deal. Very proud of that. We also see people who are, women and minorities. And trust me, the capital markets continue to demonstrate tremendous bias against women. So it's a big deal just to support a woman, because she is not getting a fair shake in the marketplace in any other other aspect of the market. So we got to be deliberate about that a little bit. And, I can invest in things that I think are going to help the planet, like EVs and vegan bakeries. I can invest in, just so many cool things, so many ways to advance things that I think are good. And it's so easy to do.